Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 27th episode of Toaster Talk. We have our favorite set of panelists on the show today, and we are going to discuss what's lined up for the Mexican Grand Prix. But before that, happy Halloween to all our viewers out there. Hopefully, you're trick or treating wherever you are, because a lot of trick or treating is happening on the track and off the track, depending on how you take the fine that FIA has slammed at Red Bull, whether it's a trick or a treat. We'll get to know what our panelists think about that. But before we get into that and introduce our panelists, I'll ask each of our panelists as the start off to kind of, in the Halloween theme, highlight what's been the most scariest scenario that they've seen in F1 or the most horror-stricken scenario that they can think of that could happen in F1. And I know this is a curveball, so I'm going to let whoever wants to go up first start off, rather than me putting anyone on the spot, the horror of it.
So F1 is riddled with accidents throughout. I mean, every season there is at least one or two such accidents which tend to shock us. I mean, for example, this time it was in Silverstone. 2020 was Bahrain. But the one that I find was the most horrifying, yet somehow most amazing, was Belgian Grand Prix 1993, where it is raining, you can't see in front of you, and the first two car fly past Radian, and then it tumbles. I mean, it was a domino effect. The car behind slits, the next car hits it, and then every car just runs into it, the entire pile. Within the first lap, they had to red flag the whole race because nearly half the grid was out of car. They were all in a junk pile that had formed right after Radian. But the amazing part is no one was hurt. Which, like, if you think that 15 cars or 10 to 15 cars got into an accident and thankfully no one was hurt, is an amazing achievement of its own. So it's a horrifying amazement, is what I would say.
Got it.
Belgian 1993 Grand Prix.
And this is for our viewers. This is pre-Drive to Survive.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. 1998. Got the year wrong. 1998 Belgian Grand Prix.
It's still
And yes,
pre-Drive to Survive.
Pre Drive to Survive. If this had been in Drive to Survive, they still would not have covered this entire episode.
Good. That's
No
a
drama.
really interesting one, and that goes really far back. Vignesh, you want to take a stab at this?
Yeah. So for me, the most Halloween thing comes again in Spa-Francorchamps, Belgium. So let me take you to what happened there. So 2002, you had a quali, or I think so it was a race. Yeah, it was, I believe it was a quali, when Oliver Panis' engine of bar, like it went on fumes. Next behind was Kimi Raikkonen. He saw a smoke cloud, and instead of slowing his speed, this guy zooms past it, increases his speed, having no idea, okay, what is that, comes out of that smoke in that speed. And that was, to me, the most Halloween thingy, because two things. One is you have smoke clouds everywhere, so it's like gives me the theme of that ghosting horror feeling. And Kimi Raikkonen, who is normally called the Iceman, coming so fast and keeping his head calm in that situation was the best Halloween thing which I can remember. 2002 Spa-Francorchamps.
Interesting. I'm sure these are moments that the drivers don't want to relive. But Twinkle, how about you?
So maybe I'm gonna hit you guys with a recent one. So mine's Romain's crash from 2020. So I think that was pretty horrific, the way his car caught fire. Luckily, nothing really happened. I think all crashes, especially, I know both of them mentioned Spa. So I think Spa in general is very terrifying because of orange, where you can't really see what's going on ahead of you. But I think the most terrifying one in very recent history was Romain's crash in Bahrain.
Yeah, no, that was crazy, and
I
Netflix was
agree
able to
with
squeeze the
Dhruv.
drama out of that too.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, because I was watching the race and then they just finished turn three, and all of a sudden there's an explosion.
Yeah.
Which is not something that you don't see in Formula One.
Yeah.
There was an explosion, and for a second I went, what just happened? And then everyone slows down, they show the car, and like it was a shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was
True.
pretty bad. I mean, Twinkle, if you're going to say that was closer, I'm actually going to make it even more recent. My horror would be if I was sitting in Gasly's place at the Suzuka Grand Prix
Oh. Oh my God.
and I suddenly saw the trailer right at me.
Oh my God. I think even Vettel spotted it, by the way. I
Actually, I think they
so,
mentioned that three or four drivers actually
yeah.
went past it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no,
It
in
was at
fact,
least one lap
Alonso mentioned that
before.
he never even knew there was a tractor there. It was
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
after he came back in and when they told him that he knew there was a tractor. Till then, no one, many
Yeah.
of the cars that were going past did not even know there was a tractor right there, which,
Yeah.
from the FIA point of view, is a huge deal. Well,
Yeah.
they didn't even inform any of the drivers.
Yeah, so that would have been like
True.
super crazy, right? You barely, there's barely any visibility, and then suddenly out of the blue, this
Yeah.
big monster comes right at you.
But thinking
Yeah.
of it, F1 is filled with horror shows, man.
I mean, at that
Valid.
speed, you would think so that there are a lot more opportunities. But fortunately, I guess over the years, with a lot of focus on safety and security also, fortunately, nothing too serious has happened compared to the breakneck speeds that these guys drive at on tracks. And especially when they're overtaking and stuff, right? When you watch, it's like they're overtaking at 180 kilometers per hour, like side by side on a narrow lane,
Yeah.
like centimeters keeping them apart. But the skill and the temperament that they have, that seems so easy and, like, oh, that was a cool move. But imagine if either one of us were sitting in that seat and at 180 kilometers. I mean, we're in Bangalore, most of us are in Bangalore, so 40 kilometers per hour is breakneck speed. But you can just imagine
Hey,
that.
we still do things in very, we have to do even at 40 kilometers per hour, we have to take it very quickly. Otherwise, that gap gets filled in.
I mean, we have our auto drivers, right? They call them cycle gap. Like they manage to squeeze themselves in corners that are near impossible.
But you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
in fact, even in the last race, Alonso trying to overtake, Alonso trying to
Cool.
overtake Stroll. Alonso went airborne. Like if he had bit more speed, he could have just landed in some other country.
I read a posting where it said that the speed at which he was at that point, 260 kilometers per hour, is the same launch speed that a Boeing has when it's about to take off.
Yeah.
Yes, like imagine
True.
a bit more
Wow.
thrust and he could be flying. He could have just airlifted.
Now, we would have got a glimpse of the Alonso Airlines taking off from USA.
L plan
Fortunately.
lines.
But the good thing about that, since we are discussing about the previous race, is whatever the said and done, FIA finally gave him back his P7, which was much deserved. Like I don't know why would they take it away. That infringement, they just didn't
Yeah,
make
I
sense.
actually had a doubt on that. Why was the penalty?
So the penalty was actually it was supposed to be Stroll's. He got a penalty for sure. But
Yeah,
what they determined was that okay, Alonso also came and he could have taken evasive actions. He had space in his left. So it was stewards who had then determined that okay, it was also partially Alonso's fault. So they had
but he
given
was
him a
given
grid
a 30
penalty.
second time penalty, which
Yeah.
is what I didn't understand. I mean, yes, he
Yeah, I
could have
know.
taken evasive action, but the fact is, he just turned to overtake, right? Stroll is the one who moved. So I still didn't understand why Alonso was given a 30-second time penalty where others for even greater roles are given like 10 or like 5 seconds.
I
Bizarre.
mean, George
And then now
swiping
they've
out
just
Sainz itself
backtracked the
was a
whole
5
thing.
second.
Hmm.
And like after a week, they backtracked the whole thing.
So somewhere I had heard this that Omar Satnov, the Alpine guy, he went to the stewards with a dictionary to show that okay, their wordings was in such a way that Alonso should not get a penalty, and that's what convinced the FIA stewards to overturn the penalty. So in this case, an Oxford helped Alonso to get his position back.
This is why, kids, you should focus on your Red and Martin. It'll help you in the future.
At
Oh,
this
haven't
point,
heard
I
that name
don't
in
find
so long.
anything. At this point, I don't find anything hard to believe. As long as you put the words FIA in a sentence, I'll believe anything.
Yeah, now
So
I actually feel bad for Masi. Maybe it wasn't him.
yeah,
Oh,
it
no, no, no.
wasn't him.
Massey, that was on him. It's
No, the
just that
point is,
the entire FIA on its own is also just as bad.
Massey would be enjoying the
Yeah.
fun show in Australia. He's like, hold my beer.
But getting back to this weekend, and obviously Mercedes has shown the most resurgent of performances that we have seen throughout the year. I'm going to head straight to Twinkle to hear her thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I did expect them to do better by the end of the year. I did expect them to figure out what they were doing wrong. But I also don't know if this is going to stay put in the race itself, because, of course, as we've seen throughout the season, a qualifying and a race result does not mean the same thing, right? So just because they qualified at better spots does not mean that the race would go in the same direction. But yeah, it's still great progress. It's obviously very motivating for fans. And yeah, I'm very excited for the upcoming race.
I just want Hamilton to get his one win per
One
season.
win, yeah.
I don't want that record to break. That is an amazing record. And he's been coming
Right.
very close for the past couple of races now.
I mean, speaking of
Yeah.
records, Mexico has usually seen the person at third place in the qualifying go on to win the
It is
race.
Hamilton right
So
now.
Hamilton
Yeah.
is
That's exactly what I was
points for
thinking
that.
during the qualifiers.
Yeah. But funnily enough, right, when Toto was asked, like, okay, how your car is going to behave this race, this was his quote unquote that we have no clue how the car is going to behave. It behaves weirdly in some circuit, it behaves weirdly in another. So yeah, it's to us and see how the race is progressing. So this might be a one-off. I have no ideas, but considering what Toto says, he has no clue how the car is behaving.
But I love the
I
self-belief
actually
in
believe
George.
that.
Like George was so frustrated after
Hmm.
his qualifying, even though he wasn't really close to beating Verstappen's record on the circuit. But even through the conversation, the interview, it just showed the amount of self-belief that he had, that I could have done it and I just screwed up. So he has a lot
Yeah.
more belief in the car right now, which obviously augurs well for both Hammy and Russell on the race day, because self-belief obviously plays a big role on the track, something which I haven't seen so much from Sainz towards the latter half of this year.
Hmm.
And even
It's
Leclerc
hard
to
to
that
believe
end.
in Ferrari at the moment. I mean, if it is hard for the fans to believe in Ferrari, imagine how hard it is for the drivers to believe their own team. Because half the time, Sainz had to make the calls himself when it comes to strategy, as listening to what the actual strategists are telling him. So, but even then, it was in a way it was surprising though, because both the Ferraris, they are in what do they, five and six, which is such a surprise, because I mean, yes, Science somehow they didn't show the lap, but Science first lap, I mean first sector during the second try was horrifying. But Leclerc also just had just as bad a sector, which was surprising. And neither of them were anywhere near the top three, which is what I would usually expect the Ferrari to be, because irrespective of what you say, they have the best car.
Yeah.
Not the best team, but they have the best car.
Makes sense.
I
But
wouldn't really
I mean,
agree with the best car aspect also. I think they have a good car. But I still think Red Bull has the best car. I mean, evidently so. But I think they have a good card, but they have messed up strategy. I mean, that's a whole different story. But yeah,
That is what I
You
mean.
know,
So
you
Red
know
Bull
what, like,
has just as, I mean, they both their cars are almost just as good. Just that the Red
yeah.
Bull has a better team supporting them as compared to Ferrari.
yeah, in
Yeah,
that
I
way,
guess
right? I
I was
would
gonna
always
say,
want to say
uh,
that okay, that Ferrari is right. You can fire your two strategies. So the amount which you have, you can put in car development. You already have a
The whole
drivers who are
team,
acting
the
as a
whole
strategist.
strategy team, not just two,
Yeah,
the whole
yeah. So
strategy
like,
team.
remove the strategy team. You have ample of money for car development. Use your drivers as strategists, and yeah, you're going to win championship. And you have more budget compared to your rivals on car development.
yeah, no, but I think that the entire team, when you talk about it, I think one major aspect is the pit lane crew. And honestly, this entire season, I think no one comes close to beating Red Bull.
I
So Red
mean,
Bull
that's
McLaren crew has
also
always been the best.
always been the best. Yeah, they hold the record for almost every year, right? The pit lane
Yeah.
crew.
Yeah.
So
Even this year, even with
yeah,
new changes to pit lane, they still hold the
yeah,
record.
yeah.
Valid.
Like 1 point, it's always surprising. Just the sheer 1.89 seconds they change 4 tires. It takes me more time to switch on my phone.
That's your
It's
phone's processor.
Yeah,
mind-boggling always thinking of that.
that's the reason why we are not in the Red Bull pit lane crew.
But I think even what's more interesting is while we talk about the pit lane crew, it's also important that the driver stops exactly at that
Yeah,
millimeter, not even like
Yeah.
millimeter away from the exact spot. And there's no clear marking. It's not like the drivers come in and he gets blocked into that spot. They actually stop at that spot. And even if you're slightly 2 millimeters away, that easily adds a second to the everyone having to shift to get the wheels in. So it just shows that amount
yeah,
of practice and the teamwork that's there between driver and crew.
You know,
mm,
funnily, Ferrari have a pit lane marker. If you see, they have that green color laser on the tires to let the drivers know where exactly to stop. So what I believe is that okay, when you have invested so much on technology, at least you can train your pit crew better. Or the best option, cross the budget cap because you just have to pay 7 million. No props. Just cross it, bash it, and yeah, you might win the championship sooner or
Yeah.
later.
I mean, I was planning of mentioning the same point when we came to the next topic on this.
Yeah, no, but that's a good segue into the other news that came up that Red Bull's going to pay a fine. Seems like pocket change for a company, an organization that big. What are your thoughts? Like the only technical aspect to it was they would get lesser wind tunnel time next year. But what does that really mean for cars out there?
Nothing. It means absolutely nothing because there is no change in the regulation. So there is no actual change into the regulation for the cars to be changed. There might be very slight tweaks that happen here and there, but as such, the car that I've created now would predominantly be the same car that will be presented next year as well, minus a few tweaks here and there because of what they learned this season. And the whole point of them giving a $7 million fine is, like you said, it's just pocket change. It's not even a major punishment for the whole team because simple fact that Red Bull is a big conglomerate. They make a
Correct.
huge they have investment, they have other businesses. 7 million is nothing for them. The fact that, so the amount had come out, they've spent 2.2 million above budget. 2.2 million above budget when during when there is a lockdown lock-in period of, I mean, there is a budget cap. It's a huge amount which can be spent on development. I mean, if you remember Hamilton, he said with 60K more they can make a lot of changes into the car. So 2.2 is a huge amount because if you remember last term, I mean, sorry, last season, the Red Bull car was really good. Right, the Red Bull car was really good. I mean, Mercedes did catch up to them towards the end, but then the Red Bull car kept being just as good, even though they kept saying that we have reduced the development, we have reduced the development. So it does not matter if you spend 2.2 million on food.
That's just
If you have crossed the budget,
not accounting.
yes, and also if you remember Ross Braun during 2019, he mentioned that if you will be punished severely. I mean, your championship points will be reduced, or you might even be disqualified if you exceed the budget cap. None of that happened, and I'm very sure that now onwards, Mercedes, Ferrari, none of them are going to apply to just stick to the budget cap. Why do they? They don't have to stick to the budget cap when they know they just have to pay like 10 to 7 million, but they can get a better car. And the budget cap is just a joke at this moment.
You know
I
what I
think the most
want?
infuriating part is that this is not the, I mean, the fine that they are levied is not really on their next year's budget cap either. I think that's the most infuriating part. Like, remove it from their budget for next year, make them pay a penalty for their, next year's development budget. Instead of that, it's just a fine. And I mean, look at the driver salaries and stuff, right? So $7 million is just cash, literally. It's cheap change. It really doesn't matter.
It's
Yeah,
pretty much
what
just a
I
rap on the
want.
wrist, right? But yeah, go ahead, Vignesh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I want to actually observe now is that how FIA will react next year when more teams will go overboard. Now, what can happen is that, okay, since the number of teams which might go overboard is increasing, so FIA will start to give severe penalties. But then the teams can retort back stating Red Bull did it and you just gave a small fine. So how is it fair, unfair? Court will come in. And see, whenever there was a critical issue like this, for example, in 2020 or 2019, I believe, when Aston Martin copied the brake duct from Mercedes, the championship points were deducted. And here you're doing a 2.2 million overboard and not even a single champion point is deducted. I'm not talking about the drivers. Leave the drivers aside. FI has already done that. For example, in Spygate, they ensured the drivers' championship points were remaining, but McLaren's constructor championship was gone. They should have done that. Now, by doing that, what would have happened is it would have warned the teams, if you go even a bit over your budget, you are going to lose out on your drivers, on your constructors championship, which is a big amount of money. I'm telling you. Considering Red Bull is in the top of the drivers championship, which means they might be losing around 220 million at least as a drivers championship, and that is going to hit them hard.
You mean constructors?
Yeah, constructors. So 2.2, just because 2.2 million and 7 million is, like, as Satya said, it's a petty change for them. They just mark it as miscellaneous and get the work done.
You know, I agree with both your points. That Twinkle's point is also really great. That instead of the 7 million should have been deducted from their cost cap for next term. That the cost cap has already been reduced. They have to make 7 to 10 million has to be reduced from that cost cap. And if there is another breach from their side, then it has to be even more severe. Well, because there was a time where FIA was really strict with all of this. For example, when they had the balls to go and disqualify Michael Schumacher when he cheated in the last race. I mean, it was just the last race he cheated. They disqualified him from the championship. 1994, they disqualified him completely. Now the FIA is just it just seems to be trying to please as many teams as possible. The Ferrari was caught cheating, and they go and create a committee with the Ferrari to make sure other teams don't cheat. What the hell? And now Red Bull is caught exceeding the cost cap, and they just fined Red Bull $7 million. That's it. And like a bit of wind tunnel reduction.
You know,
With
Vivek,
that-
the point where we are always speaking about the points, right, at the amount. The reason is mainly because your wind tunnel, right? It's not that, okay, the teams are going to start your development after the season is over. I am pretty sure all the 10 teams have completed 90% of their development till now. Which means a 10% reduction in wind tunnel is nothing because the development is already over. The next year's car is already ready. So what it imposes is nothing.
And that's
When
what
I
Satya
have a
already
car ready,
highlighted,
so
right? Since
yeah,
there are no major
yeah.
technical regulation changes, the car that you already have this year is pretty much all lined up with all the tweaks that have happened over the season, is 90% there for next year. So again, the wind tunnel time, while would have been a great thing this year compared to what happened, with all the changes that happened from last year and the teams are still figuring things out. Next year, it might not really make that much of an impact. So this all seems more of, hey, we've given you a warning for this infringement for the first team to ever do that. And will this penalties get more severe after that? But we'll pause there about all the drama off the track because we're getting really close to the action on the track. And before we close out, I did want to hear all of your predictions for tonight's race from an India perspective, early morning tomorrow. But the Mexican Grand Prix, what are your predictions for the race today?
And I plan to
Hamilton
stay
wins.
awake and watch the whole race. Yes, Hamilton wins. That's the exact prediction even I am having.
Yeah,
The-
I mean,
the-
I really
the-
hope there's a Hamilton.
The Mexican
win today,
record should
because-
stay. The car in the third
Yeah.
place should win. So let that record continue.
Okay, so Hamilton first
Yeah.
place for both of you. What about second and third?
I don't care.
Second Max and third George. Anything's fine.
Go ahead. How about you, Vignesh? Different from what the other panelists say?
Yeah, so I would love Hamilton to win because okay, he's a legend. His record should stay intact. So yeah, Hamilton winning would be like I would say it's not a prediction. I would say it's like a prayer. It's like a desire for
Yeah.
all the F1 fans
Yeah,
that he should win
yes.
today's race. So it's more not like a prediction, but more like a prayer or a desire. I feel second should be Russell considering his car. Third can be Perez, Science, anyone. The only thing is that okay, I just don't want Sebastian Vettel's record of 13 races in a season, which is the maximum, when that need not be broken. So he's also a legend. So I don't want Max to win henceforth any races.
So my driver level would be Hamilton wins, followed by Perez, followed by Max, then Russell, and then Sainz. Because if you look at the championship points, Russell and Sainz have a 1 or 2 point difference, and there's a 10 point difference with Hamilton. So if Russell comes fourth and Hamilton comes first, there's a good possibility that Hamilton will overtake him at the drivers' championship also. So
People are doing polynomial equations here. But with that, thanks a lot, all of you. It's a couple of hours away from the Mexican Grand Prix, so I'm going to give you some time out before we all end up watching that race. But thanks again, once again, for taking your time out, sharing your thoughts on the Mexican Grand Prix and everything F1. Looking forward to an exciting race, and considering it's the last few races of the season. The Constructors' Championships closed out, the Drivers' Championships closed out, unless FIA does like a 3-week later retrospective penalty because the odd fans have said so. Usually it doesn't happen when Red Bull's involved, but with that, wishing all of you a great week ahead. Thanks a lot for being on the show again.